Okay, so I'm sitting here and I'm counting quarters. I decided to make coffee because I felt all stuffed up in my bowels. And I know that coffee helps, so I'm sitting there with the coffee and I get all jazzed up because of the caffeine or whatever. And I'm talking and I'm talking and I'm thinking about the truth again, right? Because I made a video like a couple videos ago about like a scientist and what would happen if they were looking into like a really good microscope and they were to like look in so far they found themselves, and then we'd be like, oh my god, I don't even know what to do anymore. And I think about how ridiculous that truth is, but then I think about how simple that truth is. And it seems like the most simplest things that I'm investigating are literally revealing the biggest truths to me. So I'm getting all jazzed up and I'm talking about the truth and I'm talking about like the government, and I'm like, I think about, I discovered that, but I don't believe that I personally discovered that. I feel like I realized it. Like, I feel like that truth is already there. And I don't know if it's absolute, but it's something that I definitely concentrate on. And I think about, like, what if that has already been discovered? You know what I mean? Like, what if that's already been discovered, but it's like, how do you release something like that? And then I think about presidents in the past that appeared to have been, like, assassinated and stuff for, like, trying to talk the truth. And, people just in history in general that are just like, I don't care what it takes, I'm going to get this truth out to the public, and then bam, they get shot. Or, and now you got people like talking about the truth and what truths they find, but it's all kind of creepy and weird because it's like, topsecret.com or like, whatever. And you're just like, well, I mean, yeah, you see a lot of truth in that for sure. But then it's like it's either discredited or it's taken seriously, but it's still not enough. And, I feel like some of the YouTube videos that I make, it's like, yeah, it's just YouTube. Yeah, it's just this little person right here, like talking their mind pockets to people on the internet. But then I'm like, okay, well, what about like bigger, like higher echelons and like a hierarchy? And you think about like, okay, well, even if these truths are discovered, I always think of like, lobbyists or like, when you sign something and you pass a bill and there's like, this, it's like a paper filibuster. And it's like, I don't know how many pages long, probably like thousands of pages long, right? And it's like, how much time it must take to read that crap? And there's probably so much in the fine print. I mean, literally how long that would take you. Just like flip. Like this is what the president must have to deal with. It's like all these things conscripted in there, and you're like, okay, well, it's like you got to just trust that whoever wrote that was absolutely certain. It's like really hard to micromanage every single thing that's put in front of your face. And I try to think of what the president must go through, because I know that we tend to judge the presidency and who gets elected, and it's like really confusing to the public when we don't see changes immediately or we don't see the truth immediately. But then I think about what they must have to deal with, and that's probably what they deal with, is that they trust Congress, they trust that everybody's on the same team, and they trust that everybody will make the right decisions, because these are our values as humans. As I mean, the military, they have all these values about like loyalty and honor and selfless service, and it's like these are not just military values. These are like human values. These are things that we expect out of people and within ourselves, And so when the president gets in a position like that, I imagine that in that moment you're like, okay, well, I trust that we are all going to make the right decisions for everybody, and I shouldn't have to read this whole 1,000-page property, and then later on something else gets passed, and you're like, oh, come on, like, I trusted people to make the right decisions and stuff like that. And I feel like this is something that we struggle with, like not only in a president's seat, but like in everybody's seat, like in my own seat. And so I try to think of like what it would be like to be in other people's shoes so that I can better understand their situation. And I don't know if that's absolute truth, but I imagine it must be really difficult to like go back, and it's like not even just what he's going through, but it's also what has been like compounded over like, centuries, I suppose. And you get sit in a seat, and somebody sits you in the seat, and they're like, here you go, like all this paper, and you're like, whoa, I didn't realize there was so much going on. It's like you're just there in that moment. You're like, I just want to move forward. Like, yeah, I just want to move forward. I want to change things right now. And it becomes really difficult when people worry about money and they worry about their status and what they represent. And it's like, it compounds the problem again, because you're like, yeah, but I kind of want something else. I want change, and I want this and that. And, I feel it. I felt it like in the speech, and I had dreams about the guy before he was even in his position. And I felt super positive about it. Like, he came to me in my dream. We're both sitting in, like, 2 chairs, right? And the whole room's white. And I remember him looking at me, and he took this ring off. This, like, big old ring, almost like a class ring or something like that. Or, like, I don't know. Like, I'm picturing a certain institution, but I can't think of the word. But it was like a class ring, or like a varsity ring, or something just real huge. And he handed it to me, and he said, I wish you luck in your endeavors. And it was like this total connection that I felt with this guy, both in my dreams and like in reality. Like, there was just something about the way he held his composure and everything. And I think everybody was pretty much, a lot of people were overwhelmingly on board with that guy. And I feel like people started losing their spirits for this guy. And I'm like, I can understand where people are coming from in that respect, but at the same time, I'm like, we also have to realize just how much this guy is probably dealing with on a daily basis, and like trying to keep himself happy, trying to keep the people happy, trying to keep his lobbyists in Congress and everybody else happy, and his kids and his wife. And it's like, dude, that's a lot. And we're like freaking out over the fact that he smokes, or like the fact that who cares? You know what I mean? Like, people smoke all the time. It's like whatever calms you down and keeps you happy. I feel like we judge so hardcore with these people in these positions, and I'm like, do you understand like the amount of responsibility and the seriousness that this guy has to deal with? And we freak out over him having a smoke? That just seems ridiculous to me. That's like freaking out over whether or not he eats dessert. Like, we all like dessert. What the heck is wrong with that? So I guess I went on a tangent there. It's not even what I was talking about earlier, but I guess it's like something about calming down and like trusting it. Like trusting that it will happen, it will come to fruition and stuff. But then I think about other things, and I'm like, maybe it's a lot. Even though I see a big truth in like one cell body and like becoming the whole institution, the frequencies that we see from here and from real big here, like that's probably a big truth. But then I'm like, people need the proof though. We got all these ideas, but people need the proof. And I'm like, well, maybe the scientists haven't been able to find that with a good enough telescope. But then I'm like, people need the proof. People need scientific proof. People need the proof and not just the ideas. I trust my ideas, but I don't have scientific proof. All I have is my own proof, and maybe that's not enough for people. And that's what I think about. I'm like, okay, well, even though my idea might be out there, the scientific proof is what people really need. Like, people need that. You need the proof. And I think about, maybe the scientists have found that proof and don't know how to release it, or maybe they're being stopped from releasing it. Maybe they think people might freak out. And I think, well, maybe they haven't. Maybe they haven't had the proof available to release to the public. Or maybe people stop them from that because they're like, well, what about my money? What about my, Exxon gas mobile station? You know what I mean? Like, I think about that, and I'm like, but it would like calm everybody down. And everyone would stop freaking out. And I think about the media. Like, I think about the media and what, people freaking out about this and that and the propaganda. And it, like, stops the... I feel like that it stops from seeing the truth. It stops from feeling the truth. If it feels uncomfortable, it's probably not the proof we need to, like, be happy and to move forward. And so then when I think about that, I think about, okay, well, I'm like somewhat aware of like ancients and ancient technology, and I talk to the trees and I talk to everything else, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe it needs a bigger proof than that. Maybe it needs a bigger proof than science, than that. Because we realize that when people try to release a big truth, people get shot, or people don't believe it, or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, what would be a bigger proof to that puzzle. And I think about like the bigger body that I'm a part of, and I think of this ancient, he's an Indian. He's like this really, really big, tall Indian dude that I found that, that was in my dreams. As soon as I asked for help, he picked me up out of the jungle, out of this really uncomfortable, scary situation, dimension, I suppose. And I was like all warm and comfy in his hands, He held me in his hands. He didn't even say a word. We just understood that I needed help, and he helped me out. And it's like, I think about a bigger proof, and I'm like, well, that's all the proof you need. You bring the ancients into it. You bring the bigger body into it, and they reveal themselves, and it's like, oh, you don't even need science. You don't even need technology. You don't need the proof, because the pudding would be so large. There would be your proof. And I guess that's what I come down to. It's like I go from like the smallest problem, and I'm like, well, how do you fix that? What are they dealing with? How do you fix that? We need the proof. And then I'm like, maybe it needs to be an even bigger proof than that. You know what I mean? And I feel like if the ancients so they were just like there, like it might freak people out a little bit. But then I think like, yeah, but they're like, we're their little cellmates. We're their little bodies, just like our little cellmates inside of our bodies. You know what I mean? Because the structures are the same. That's what I believe, that the structures are the same, that there's a bigger body. I mean, we see even in like hieroglyphics back in the day where like people were way, way, way bigger. Well, maybe they were even bigger than we possibly imagined. It just wasn't inscripted. Or maybe it was inscripted and I just haven't like found that yet. But that's what I believe, whether or not I have seen the pictures or the proof. That's what I believe. And then my dreams. Yeah. So that's what I think about what would like totally make people happy and relax is like the truth. And I think about how it would be revealed and what would like fix it so that the president didn't have to freak out about it, and so that no one would have to worry about getting shot with the truth. I mean, we shouldn't even have to worry about that. It's weird that we even worry about getting shot over the truth and stuff. It's just weird. Shouldn't be like that, right? It shouldn't be like that. The truth should be happy as all get out. You know what I mean? Like all that in a bag of chips. That's what it should be. It should be happy. It should be a happy release. Like pooping, It should be a happy release. Not like, oh my God, I might be shot if I tell somebody this. Yeah, that's why YouTube is so great. I just wish it was more real. And taken like more seriously, I guess, in a way. I feel like if enough people knew that or whatever, it would like spread more positivity. It shouldn't feel negative. The truth shouldn't be negative. The truth should be positive. Very, very positive, and what makes you feel the best, and what makes you feel the most comfortable, and the most warm, and the most excited, and the most happy. And when I think about a giant, giant ancient being, like in my dream, and I felt warm, taken care of, comfortable, excited, a little confused, but I felt home in his hands. I felt home. And that's what matters the most to me, is that. It was an extremely positive experience because I was scared and he took care of me. Okay, that's all I have to share for now. Thanks for watching.